right, today we're going to talk about standard 6.02 or 6.03, which is the Neolithic age or the farming age. The difference between mankind is as they began to learn different things, then they began to change and start having more. As a quick review, what does nomad mean? Everybody should know that nomad means no permanent home. That doesn't mean that Paleolithic man who would hunt and follow the food would not come back to the same place that they were before, but they just didn't stay there all the time. Paleolithic man, we know that Paleolithic man used for tools, stone, bone, antler, ivory, and wood. What did they use for shelter? They used caves, or they used mammoth bone huts, or teepees, or things like that. Mankind will still use that in certain places in the world, like in Siberia. How did controlling fire help mankind? It gave them...
Teachers, please pardon the interruption. When you get a chance at your earliest convenience, please check your email. I did send an email out to everybody, so just check that when you can. Thanks.
Okay, this is a real class. Mankind used fire for light in the dark, warm in the cold, cooking food, protection from predators, and to smelt metal. Next. So, next, we'll do that later. All right, this is a good graphic that shows the difference between Paleolithic man and Neolithic man. We talk about this in class. It's really funny. You can pause it right here if you're watching at home and kind of read it. It's pretty funny. Next. All right, so recapping. Paleolithic man was the dawn of man till about 6,000 years ago, or 6,000 BC, known as the Old Stone Age, where you first have the use of stone tools and a little bit of agriculture. Next. So they traveled all over the place. What did they travel for? We know they traveled for they were going after the food. Next. How do we know they did this? We have evidence. They left us evidence. Art is the expression of man's life most of the time. You'll find that in the written word. You'll find it in painting, sculpting. But we know that man hunted these animals because he showed us that he did. Next. Cows, horses. Next. Fat horse. Next. So the Neolithic Revolution, we break that down into several categories. Those categories, if you can tilt that without putting her back up in the screen. Here's our categories right here. It's the what, where and when, how, what kinds of food, and the results. So if you want to pause it right here and look at the notes, that will help you. Okay, next. So the agricultural revolution mainly centers on domestication. Domestication is going to be one of your 6th grade words. Domestication means to control. It's to control plants and animals. You're going to control what? You're going to control where, you're going to control how much. Okay, that is true even today at my garden. My wife puts my garden out. She controls what we're planting, where it is, and how much. And it's the same thing with animals. We have chickens. We have a certain amount. They're in our backyard, and we can control how many. Controlling meant to stay put. When you put a fence around something, you have to stay there. If you capture some animals and you feed them and they make more animals, then you have to stay in that area. It led to village life. People staying where they were. What we all know they had to be near what? Starts with a W, right? Don't talk. Okay, they have to be near the water. Next. Where? The where first begins right in what's called the Fertile Crescent. This is Mesopotamia and Canaan, which we know of today as Iraq, Syria, Jordan, and Israel. That's where it first arose. And then if you come down here, it also happens in Egypt around the same time. You have to have stable water supply. They had the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. They had the Nile River. They had stable fresh water. These would flood, which we're going to talk about next week, creating fertile soil. And so they learned how to plant crops. Next. Next again. So here, these are basically going to be our civilizations that we studied this year. Mesopotamia and Canaan, 1, 2. Egypt, 3. China, 4. India, 5. Greece and Rome, 6 and 7. So these were started to do this much before the other areas. And then the other areas learned it from them. Next. So how did it develop? Well, we should all know how it develops. You know, you eat an apple, you throw the apple in your yard, you leave it for 3 years, you come back to that same spot, you got an apple tree. Man is smart. They're going to figure out that they can do that. Next. The end of the Ice Age, you're going to have a warming of the planet. We know warmer temperatures allow for more growing. Next. Humans began helping them by picking out which one they want, the stronger seeds, putting them in a good area, taking care of them. Now, they still hunted and gathered, but now you're starting to have a stable food supply. Certain plants were abundant, such as wheat, barley, and oats. This is the staple for making grain. And the reason grain is important is because you can dry store it. You can store it, mix it with water, heat it up, and make bread. Okay, now, that has not always been good for mankind because bread's not very good for you. The Paleolithic diet is much better. But you can store this in times of trouble. As long as you keep it dry, you can store this for years. Hey, we have found some ancient storehouses that you can make this stuff right now. Next. Here's the different grains. Next again. What else is needed? Next again. You're going to need animal domestication. That means controlling the animals. You're going to have animals not just to eat, but to work. Animals are stronger. Next. An animal will breed where and when we want it to and how often. It will come to us for food and not be aggressive. So, was man ever really able to tame deer? No. But we could tame cows. We could tame pigs. We could tame horses. So we were be able to tame some. Next. Give me an example. Next. Horse, cow, pig, sheep, goats, chickens. Next. Those are all from Eurasia. So if you turn and look at the map, you don't have to turn and look at the map, but if you look at the map of the ancient world, Africa, Europe, Asia, right around, and that connected is part of what we're going to talk about in the ancient world. Next. There we go. Same old things. That's a good looking cow, ain't it? Next. Next again. Oh, go back up. So if you want to compare this to ancient America, they only really had guinea pigs and turkeys and llamas. So, you know, obviously they were not as civilized or sophisticated. Next. What did it do? It led to, next. It led to a sedentary or staying put lifestyle. Next. It led to the need for cooperation and group effort. Once you start having more food, you're going to have more population. When you have more population, not everybody has to work in food. When not everybody has to work in food, you can start having specialized jobs. People who make the clothes. They make the clothes, they give it to you, you give them some of your crops. They don't have to work for the crops, you don't have to make the food. That's called a barter or trade society. Almost everything in the ancient world was trade. Money wasn't really introduced for a long time. Next. Job specialization, which is what I'll talk about. Next again. Social hierarchies. Once you start having a sedentary lifestyle, somebody's going to be in charge. Somebody's going to be the strongest dude on the block. Somebody's going to have control of the swords. Somebody's going to own the land. Next. Patriarchy, ruled by males. That's just how it is. Get over it. Next. Population growth. More food, more people. Next. People began to have extra, which is called surplus. Whenever you have more of something, you could trade it for something that you have less of. Everybody paying attention? Okay, next. New sources of clothing. As the temperature warms up, you're not going to want to wear fur all the time. You're going to want to start wearing leather. Leather still gets very hot, but you're going to start growing plants that you can make food from. Clothes from. Results. It led to kings. Next again. That was super slow. Next again. Led to militaries. You're going to start having a bunch of crops, big areas of farmland, farm animals. You want to make sure those are protected, right? So you don't want somebody to come in and try to steal it. The hearts of man is black, we'll learn later, okay? So you're going to start having a military to protect you and your stuff. Next. You're going to have to start having priests to tell why the gods are blessing you or punishing you for having good crops or not. Next. You're going to start having scribes. People are going to write down all the cool stuff you and your king are doing. Next. And then you're going to start having people whose only job is to make people happy. Art, literature, paintings, things like that. Art is only made to enjoy. Next. Right, there's some writing. Next. Go ahead. Did everybody switch? No. Obviously everybody didn't switch, but eventually most people will switch. Next. River Valley civilization calls out for a reason. Next. 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 They obviously didn't do it there. Next. Now, here's the question. And this is what I asked you all yesterday. Was this good or bad? There is some argument that it was bad because relying on grain to survive is hard work and it's not good for you. Okay, next. It is a mistake. Food production equals hard work. Next again. It often led to poorer health, shorter lifespans, harder labor for a majority of the people. Next. Everybody should get this. All right? All right, go forth and learn because knowledge is power. Next.